So let's go ahead and start by making a new material for our special gem blocks. Block color 0 unmatched. Duplicate that and call it special block gem matte. And it's just going to be green, but I want the same parameters in case I need those. Maybe like a blue-green. I think in the real game they actually kind of pulse, like every second or two it blinks to let you really see that those are coming down the pipeline. But we'll see how that looks. So I think this could be a good opportunity to reuse our curved cube shape that we made, this cube sphere shape. We'll have a small cube sphere inset inside the cube blocks, just sticking out from the front side of it. So I'll show you what I mean. We're going to modify the block blueprint and just add another variable saying B is special block. And if it is a special block, that means it contains one of these gems. And when it matches its neighbors, it needs to do a special extra step. But it shouldn't be too different in all other respects from a normal block. So we want to have all the same behavior as a normal block. But on construction, we're going to spawn in the little gem inside of us if we are a special block. So let's just for debugging purposes, I'm going to make the block mesh initially visible just so I can see it right now, so I know where to place my gem. So I need to make another skeletal mesh, and this is going to be gem mesh. And relative to the box, it can go ahead and be childed to the block mesh. Yeah, that'll be fine. I'll make this 0.3, 0.3. It's going to be much smaller than that, probably. 0.1 maybe. That might be too small. Yeah, maybe 0.2. That could be okay. What is this, 50? No. 37.5. We want to make sure this has the right shape from the get-go. We want it to be kind of curved. So on construction, I'll make a new function just called initialize gem mesh. And in this function we'll branch based on whether we are a special block or not. And if we're not, then we're going to hide this gem mesh. And we have to make sure that this is completely, so yeah, no overlap events, no collision. Good. I think it inherited the properties from its parent, so. And if we are a special block, then we want to set the scalar parameter, or set the morph target. We want to set the morph target on this gem mesh. It's called sphere key. We want to set that to 1, I believe. And then we could actually do that whether or not we are a special block, but no need to do it if we're not, so. Now I'd like to be able to test this here in the viewport, but I don't know if that's going to work. If we actually call it, it might start showing up in the viewport. Okay, cool. So that's good. And if we turn this to false, it'll disappear. Cool. And we want this to have the gem material on it. So there we go. I think it doesn't need to be that emissive actually. So I'm going to go into this material and turn that down to like 0.2. And that should be good. So by default this is going to be false though. And I can go ahead and turn this mesh invisible again. Don't need it. And let's see if I haven't broken anything yet. Now let's see, when we rotate, all we're doing is changing colors. We're not actually moving the blocks around, so when we rotate, we need to make sure we inherit the specialness of our block too. So with that in mind, I'm actually going to change this function a little bit so that every single gem gets its morph target set, whether or not it's even visible at the moment. So this is going to happen for every single block, because there's a better chance now that each block could have its gem be visible at certain points based on the rotations that occurred. So now we can just remove this and just have it look like that now. So now let's go to the player controller and look at the rotate functions. And we actually need to also bring over the is_special_block property of each block when we rotate. And I'll first show you why we need to do that, and then we'll do it. But first let's actually add this property to some blocks. So when we spawn in a quad, we will give like a random 1 in, let's say 1 in 20 chance for a block to be a special block. But we'll do a 1 in 10 to start with, just so we can actually see them when we're testing. But we'll reduce it to 1 in 20 later. But let's go ahead and spawn in quads. So when we decide colors, that happens when we create a new preview quad. So we need the special gem to be in the preview quads too, so we're going to have to add that to the preview quad generation. We'll first run a 1 in 20 check, or 1 in 10 for now, to see if any of the blocks is going to be a special block. And then if that's true, we'll do a random number between 0 and 3 inclusive to see which of the 4 blocks it's going to be. So random integer between 0 and 9. Yeah, this will be a number between 0 and 9 inclusive, so a 1 in 10 chance. If this number is equal to 0, let's say, doesn't really matter what number, just one of the numbers, then we pick a number between 0 and 3, and that index is going to have a special block on it. So we'll return another output, which is just going to be, let's see, it'll be another 4-element Boolean array, but only one of them could ever be true at a time, and that's going to be which of the 4 blocks, if any, is special. So special array, an array of Booleans again. I'm just going to call this special here in the local version. And I'm just going to say the index with the true value indicates which of the 4 elements, if any, is a special block. So then we'll do a switch on int again with only 4 possibilities. And so all we're going to do is set one of these 4. Oh, I guess I could do this without a switch statement. If I just get a random integer and set the, so have this by default be a 4-element array. And then set the index of this value to true. So set array element at this index to true. So one of these 4 elements is going to be set to true based on this value. And then that's it. And then we'll remit to this here, and then this is just going to go straight across. There we go. Try to clean it up a little bit. So if this check passes, then one of our 4 blocks will be made special. Otherwise, none of them will. And then at the end of this, we just return the special array. And then we need to pass this along to the preview quad construction script as well. So this needs to be instance editable and exposed on spawn. And then here when we spawn in the preview quad, oh, there it is. Okay, now we just need to hook this up. And then based on that result, when we construct. So after deciding which color the base block is going to be, we'll reconnect these two paths, and based on special array at that index, if it's true, we'll make sure we spawn the gem inside too. So actually I'll just do this. Okay, I need to change all these to say special array instead of color array. And then if it's true, I actually need to spawn in the gem, and if it's not true, I just don't do anything. And when I say spawn in the gem, I actually need to create those 4 components. TL_gem. Okay, I'm now testing out a new microphone, so I'm going to see if this sounds any better. It's not a perfect setup physically, so it's a little bit too close to my keyboard, but we'll see if it's acceptable. Hopefully my voice sounds a little bit clearer than before, but the mouse clicking and the keyboard clacking might be too loud, in which case I'll have to come up with a new setup to make it work better. But let's get back to this special gem we're trying to put inside the blocks. So before I was trying to use our skeletal mesh cube sphere object, but this is really overcomplicating it to use the morph targets to set it into the semi-spherical shape. It is more trouble than it's worth. We don't really want to need to mess with a skeletal mesh. There's no need to do that. So what I did instead was I made a new mesh in Blender called beveled cube. So I just used the bevel modifier on the starting cube in Blender to just give a cube with rounded edges. And it's just a static mesh now, so we don't need to worry about setting the morph targets on our skeletal mesh. It was just unnecessary complexity. So instead of having the skeletal mesh here, I'm going to just remove this entirely. And we'll make static meshes childed to each of these that have the beveled cube inside of it. So I'll add a static mesh component here of type beveled cube. And I put the gem material on it as a default. So I just need to shrink this down now so that it's like, what is it, 0.2. And then bring it forward by, I think it was like 37.5. So that's like halfway out, or a quarter of the way out. Just so that the rounded edges show up. So I'll just call this TL gem again. And I'll copy this and paste it here. I'll child it to BL, call it BL_gem, and then its location needs to be. Okay, so I just repeated that for all 4 blocks in this quad. Just added a gem static mesh as a child component. And now we just need to, we can have those be initially invisible. Also make sure we turn off all collision options on these static meshes. So overlap events off, no collision. And we'll have them all be initially not visible, and we'll turn them visible in the construction script here if this special array is true for that block. So this is top left, or this is bottom left, top left, bottom right, top right. So if the bottom left special array index 0 is true, then we just turn the BL gem visible. So we just here set visibility to true. If this index element. If the element this index is true, then we set this gem to be visible. And then we just repeat that process for all 4 of the gems. Only one of these should ever be true at a time, but so index 1 here is for the TL gem. Index 2 is for the BR gem. And index 3 is for the TR gem. And just to avoid any warnings, I'm going to go ahead and give the special array a default size of 4, so that it doesn't try to access an array of length 0 when it's doing this construction stuff. But special array should get set to its value when this object is created. So when we make a new preview quad in the game mode, we should be sending in the special array to the construction script. So one of those numbers should be true. Just for testing, let's see if we'll make this random integer between 0 and 0, so it'll always be true. So this should always return true. So we should always set one of the elements of the special array to true. So just for testing purposes, let's see. Every single preview quad should have a gem, unless we're doing something wrong, which we very well could be doing something wrong. Just for testing, let's see if we set one of these indices to true and compile. We should see the gem now in the viewport like that. So these do set those like that. But that could mean we're not getting the special array values properly on construction. Okay, we did get a true there, so it's just the initial ones don't get special array. Okay. So we are spawning in the special blocks properly. So there was no need for this debugging in the first place. The issue is just the initial blocks don't have any specials on them, and that's fine. We don't even have to worry about doing that because we don't need to give the player special blocks in the initial spawning in of the initial preview quads. Like, we can just make this always false. Or if we do hook this up, there's a chance for them to be. So I guess we could, now we have the option to choose whether we want the possibility of a special block spawning in one of the very first preview quads that show up. I'm going to go ahead and leave that unhooked so that it's by default 0, 0, 0, 0. So there can't be any special blocks among the first 4 quads that show up on screen, because the player's not going to need one that early. There's no benefit to having one that early, really. So now we need to make sure that those transfer over to the player's quad properly when it spawns in. Because right now, if we try to get a preview quad, and the top left block of the player quad now needs to have that special block on it. So when we make the zeroth preview quad into a new quad, we need to pass in the special array. So for this same preview quad, we need to get its special array and pass that information into spawn new quad. So every block PP needs to have B is special block exposed on spawn. So that here in the game mode when we spawn in our block PPs. We somehow need to force a reset on this blueprint because the is_SpecialBlock node is not, the is_SpecialBlock pin is not showing up here. It might show up if we close down this graph entirely. No, it's still not showing up here, so we can just hook up some new nodes to it. So I just need to replace all these spawn actor nodes with a fresh copy that will include the is_SpecialBlock pin.